All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for some wisdom. Wisdom of the Ages. Wednesday Wisdom of the Ages, reading from Dr. Wayne W. Dyer's wonderful book subtitled 60 Days to Enlightenment. But as I always say, if you can get to enlightenment in 60 days, leave me a comment and let me know, because that seems to be an incredible time for anybody to achieve enlightenment, because as most of us know, it takes many lifetimes, maybe 60 lifetimes. But anyways, before I ramble on anymore, today's reading from Wisdom of the Ages is titled by Dr. Dyer, Kindness. The topic is kindness, and it's a poem, which is a great poem, entitled, Do Not Weep, Maiden, for War is Kind. And it was written by Stephen Crane, an American novelist, short story writer. He lived from 1871 to 1900, even. And he was also a war correspondent, probably best known for the Red Badge of Courage. Stephen Crane, who died at age 29, it's unfortunate. Only 29. See, that's something amazing about all of these authors and poets that are in the Wisdom of the Ages. They all don't make it very far, and yet somehow they had such great, like Wayne Dyer continues here, who died at the age of 29, managed to produce work that assured him and assured many of these people a prominent place in American literature, or whether it be European literature. But we're talking about Stephen Crane here today. And so his incredible work that he did at just up till the young age of 29 assured him a permanent place in American literature. So let's go right into, ladies and gentlemen, this poem. It's a longer one than most of these. Usually they're just about a quarter of a page, as you can see. Well, yeah, there you can see. This one's a full page and just the top bit of the next page. So let's dive right into it. Hope you got yourself a beverage or comfy seat, whatever it is. Get comfortable, ladies and gentlemen, because this is going to be some fantastic Wisdom of the Ages. All righty. Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind. Do not weep, maiden, for war is kind, because your lover threw wild hands towards the sky, and the affrighted steed ran on alone. Do not weep, war is kind. Horse, booming drums of the regiment, little souls who thirst for fight. These men were born to drill and die. The unexplained glory flies above them. Great is the battle, God, great and his kingdom, a field where 1,000 corpses lie. Do not weep, babe, for war is kind, because your father tumbled in the yellow trenches, ragged at his breast, gulped and died. Do not weep, war is kind. Swift blazing flag of the regiment, eagle with crest of red and gold, these men were born to drill and die. Make point for them the virtue of slaughter, make plain to them the excellence of killing, in a field where 1,000 corpses lie. Mother whose heart hung humble as a button on the bright, splendid shroud of your son, do not weep, for war is kind. Stephen Crane. Wow. See, this is why I skipped over this one a couple weeks ago, because it's such a dark topic. And I first heard this poem when I was learning about the taking of the American West back in the founding of our country here. And, that was something that pertained to what was happening and, some of the terrible things that were going on in the name of manifest destiny. But with this being such a somber subject, Wayne Dyer will lift us out, because I know he's always got some wonderful lesson to take out of these great authors and poets that offer us wisdom from the ages. And this is titled Kindness, and this is about kindness. So let's see how Wayne Dyer can take us to kindness out of that, ladies and gentlemen. He begins by saying, Stephen Crane, the youngest of 14 children, lived a short but highly explosive life. He wrote about what simultaneously seemed to both attract him and repel him. The violence of the streets and the victims it creates was the subject matter of his first novel. Maggie, A Gift of the Streets was the title, a sympathetic story of an innocent girl from the slums and her descent into prostitution and eventual suicide. Man, Stephen Crane wrote some gloom subjects. Wayne Dyer continues by saying, in 1893, this topic was so taboo in literature that the book was privately printed and Crane had to use a pseudonym. This was followed in 1895 by his classic story of the horror of war, The Red Badge of Courage. He wrote of his aversion to violence and his sympathy for victims and the downtrodden, yet he was equally attracted to report and experience firsthand these outrages. Interesting. And once lived with a former brothel house proprietor, Stephen Crane's career as a writer and journalist, covering wars wherever they cropped up on the planet, was brief. He died at age 29 of malarial fever and tuberculosis contracted while he was in Cuba covering the Spanish-American War. Amazing. It's amazing some of the different lives and journeys that some of these people, especially in the 1800s, went through. It's just it boggles the mind to think of some of the things that some people were able to accomplish. Wayne Dyer continues, for me, this poem of deep irony is not only a disparaging attack on war and all of horror, but a classic statement against violence of any kind. Also included is the violence that we observe daily of man's inhumanity to man, and the rage and fury within our own hearts. These are equally as destructive and are also the subject of the poet's lament against war. His ironic poem, War is Kind, is a commentary on what he termed those little souls who thirst for fight and who find virtue in something so horrifying as slaughter and excellence in a field of 1,000 corpses. For me, this is a lesson, Wayne Dyer says, to look within myself for any remnant of a little soul who might find glory in the trumpeting of man's inhumanity to each other. It is a reminder to allow my big soul to triumph over its lesser compatriot and to suppress curiosity about or fascination with violence of any kind. And this is a subject that, has been mentioned a couple times in the Wisdom of the Tao, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which we're reading on Tuesdays. And it's also been mentioned multiple times in this series, The Wisdom of the Ages, talking about the aversion of violence, trying to not take part in any form or, as far as entertainment goes or supporting. I think one of the things that this particular reading today is getting at is the fact that we tend to convince ourselves when there's a reason to fight that it's for just causes. And I think what was being spoken about by Stephen Crane in this poem is that there is no justice and glory in a field with 1,000 corpses. You might win the battle, but nobody, everybody mourns. That was what the Tao was speaking about. Even though the battle is won, you celebrate the victory by mourning your losses. And so there really is no victors. There is no winners in this kind of violence, especially war. But we're all human. So this is why we're trying to learn and, research and try to understand and begin to apply into our own lives this kind of great wisdom, so that maybe we can not only change our own lives to increase the quality of our lives, but also change the lives of the world around us, the people in the world around us, and maybe change the world for the better. There are people, Wayne Dyer continues, who, wait, let me see. For me, this is a lesson to look within myself for any remnant of a little soul who might find glory in the trumpeting of these terrible kind of things. It is a reminder to allow my big soul, Wayne Dyer says. I remember yesterday we were talking about your higher self, or your, I forget what he called it, but your Tao self or your higher self, this part of you that is above the physicality of the world and, what we get so trapped into living our daily lives. And so it's this big soul to triumph over its lesser compatriot and to suppress curiosity or fascination with violence of any kind. There are people who carry guns and leave maidens weeping all over the world, be it on battlefields or in our homes, schools, streets, and playgrounds. All seem to be men who were born to drill and die. Yet we do not believe that anyone has such a destiny at birth. This carnage is the result of our own curiosity about and fascination with warfare and killing. With violence and rage, with warfare, killing, with violence and rage, so that we attract into our collective lives the very thing we fear the most. And see, that's another thing, talking about the way that manifesting or creating reality through our minds, through our thoughts, through what it is that we think about, because what we think about expands, because that's what we have to act on. And so I'll read that sentence again. Our own curiosity and fascination with warfare, killing, violence, and rage results in that being attracted into our collective lives, because that's the thing that we're thinking about so much. And so I would hope that so many of us are beginning to remove our fascinations and curiosity with violence, rage, warfare, and killing. And you might be thinking, who is fascinated and curious about that kind of stuff? But when you look at the genres of movies and TV shows and video games and, even what's on this over here, it's like, as I've grown through this journey of whatever you want to call it, spiritual growth, philosophical growth, psychological growth, as I've gone down this path now for many years, I find it very hard to go back and watch some of the films that I used to love so much, because I just don't care for the violence. It almost ruins a good film. It's almost like, okay, I gotta skip through this part. Like, there's some great Westerns, but unfortunately they're filled with so much violence. I'm like, the dialogue is fantastic back in those older movies. And that's what made them so great to me, is you didn't need special effects or, crazy things going on all the time. You could just have a couple people having a back and forth conversation. And the dialogue was so well written, and the actors, had to have the perfect facial expressions. And it was just different. But once again, the violence, it just makes it hard to watch some of the things, leave me a comment. Let me know if you've been feeling that way yourself over the past couple of years. You find it hard to watch some of the things that you used to enjoy because there's just so much violence in it. Now, sorry, that was a little bit of a ramble there. I had to get that out, a little bit of a rant. And so we live in a more subtle fashion, Wayne Dyer continues, the same kind of life as the poet Stephen Crane, attracting to ourselves that which repels us. If we don't harness that little soul, the ego self, or sometimes it's referred to in Zen as the monkey mind, the part of you that's just running and running and running, and it's not the part of us that is collected. When you begin to practice meditation, you start to detach yourself from your running mind, and you begin to see what kind of thoughts are popping in, and you begin to choose which kind of thoughts you want versus which ones you don't want. You just let the ones you don't want go. It's like a train. Like the train is going by, and if you don't like these cars, they just keep going by. That's the way that I thought about it. Anyways, let me continue. Attracting to ourselves. If we don't harness that little soul, we too will become victims of the search for the unexplained glory of the battle god and his kingdom where 1,000 corpses lie. Quoted from the poem. Our fascination with violence and its ultimate implementation, killing, is reflected in our preoccupation with action films wherein human life is reduced in value so much that the taking of these lives is considered entertaining. Killing for the sake of keeping the customers happy takes its toll on our collective consciousness, whether we recognize it or not. And see, this is the interesting thing. Most people think, oh, it was just a movie. It's not real. Don't worry, it's not real. You got to know that it's just a movie. It's just, but it's like, do you really believe that what you see and what you think about and what you fill your mind with doesn't have an impact on your life? And do you think if you go, watch films with all kinds of, or whatever it be, if you entertain yourselves with all kinds of killing, especially horror movies, it just doesn't make sense to me, but that's a different rant. It's like, I think most people don't realize how their mind and their consciousness affects their own life and their own reality, and what becomes our world collectively through all of our consciousnesses and all of our thoughts and minds and intentions and the things that we spend our time on. You only have a limited amount of mental energy to use. And if we're all creators here through, the mind principle coming down through, and it's this flowing process of back and forth, a reciprocity of creation. It's like if we're using that limited amount that we have to, you know where I'm going with this. I'll continue. To focus on the wrong things. That's where I was going. It's not going to end up where we want it to end up. So we defend the need and the right to carry handguns, and they therefore become a high profit item in the world of commerce. That's an argument for a different day. A gun for every man, every woman, and child is now the goal of this industry. And we are getting closer each day. Do not weep, for war is kind. Now, see, I personally stand from the opinion that you won't have the kind of senseless, killings and things that the news tries to fill our minds with all the time, because that's all they love to report on. But you wouldn't have that kind of stuff. How do I say this? I don't want to say this the wrong way. You didn't see that stuff in Tombstone. It was like, there was no, if somebody shot somebody, they were expected, they better expect to get shot at back. And see, it just creates this kind of life. But I stand, I'm firmly not against. It's one of those topics, ladies and gentlemen. Each and everybody has their own opinion, but the one thing I think that keeps the government sometimes in check from truly controlling its citizens is that thing that we're getting at here. Having the ability to defend yourself. So maybe before we remove weapons from the citizens, we should do it for the... See, we're already getting off the topic. All right, let us continue. Do not weep, for war is kind. I'm surprised that Wayne Dyer titled this kindness. Fascinating. But there's another page, so let's see where he gets to, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, this is kind of why I skipped this, because this isn't the normal kind of topic that I get into. I'm more, spiritual, philosophical, mystical, kind of up in the clouds kind of ideas. But I just wanted to do this because this is one of those memorable poems when it comes to these kind of subjects. Wayne Dyer continues, yet there is much to weep about, and there is no shortage of tears. Maidens howl in anguish every hour of the day as loved ones fall victim to our almost insatiable attraction to war and unnecessary violence. We live in the most violent society on earth, where hundreds of thousands are killed and maimed yearly with barely a flicker of attention from our leaders, who are busy chastising others on human rights violations. I'm sorry, it's just the irony. None of this is funny, so don't take it like I'm laughing at. It's just the irony of the timing of this. I mean, this could pertain to any time period that we're living through, but right now, he wrote this back in 1991, the year I was born, matter of fact. But, so it's like, right, these things apply throughout time. And that was the most fascinating thing about the Tao, is being 2,500 years old. Everything that's spoken about in the Tao applies to right now. And it's just amazing. And so recently, Wayne Dyer says, state officials from China were not granted full diplomatic recognition in an official visit because their country was being bitterly criticized for its stand on human rights. They seem to me to be as ironic as Stephen Crane's poem, Do Not Weep, Maiden, for war is kind. To make a huge dent in this kind of fascination with war, killing, and violence, we must first look within our own hearts and allow the big soul, our higher self, to triumph over those inclinations. We must find the place within ourselves where we know that in some non-earth-based way, we are all connected by an invisible organizing intelligence, and we need to live in this awareness. Yes. See, he did it again, ladies and gentlemen. After all that, I was like, man, this is a rough one. I'm not really liking all this so far. And then he just hits the nail on the head with the ultimate sentence. He's like, to make a huge dent in this kind of fascination with war and killing and violence, we must first look within our own hearts and allow ourselves to have a new awareness. And this is why we're doing this. This is why I'm doing this channel, because I think enlightenment is a greater awareness, a greater understanding. Wayne Dyer's teacher and master taught him that enlightenment, the meaning of enlightenment, was being immersed in and surrounded by peace. And that's another way to think about it. But this is why we're trying to discover this, because we need to get to this awareness where we find the place within ourselves, each and every one of us, and then it can start to spread. And as it spreads, more and more people will begin to find this place, this new awareness within ourselves, where we know that in some non-earth-based way, some non-physical way, we are all connected by an invisible organizing intelligence, whether you want to call it God, the Tao, Great Spirit, universe, source, the invisible organizing intelligence. And we need to live in this new awareness. That could just be a video on its own right there. That is just fantastic. I don't even know if we needed all of the first part. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let us continue, because we need to live in this new awareness. We must refuse, Wayne Dyer says, to participate in any form of activity that purports to be entertainment. And it's funny, this gets talked about so much in these two books that I've been reading, Wisdom of the Ages and the Wisdom of the Tao. And I think it's a great teaching, is the kind of entertainment which trivializes violence and killing. We must refuse to continue to participate. We must teach our young sons that they were not born to drill and die, not born to throw their hands toward the sky in some kind of ego ritual to dying in battle as a badge of courage. We must raise them to have disdain for violence and to check the impulses of fury brought on by an over-identification with ego's need to be triumphant in battle and any other situation in life, all that. We must teach them and ourselves the value of cooperation over competition and the great wisdom in the Native American homily. Yes, I was hoping he would say it. No tree has branches so foolish as to fight amongst themselves. Think of that one, ladies and gentlemen, when you see people squabbling or, whatever it is. It's like, if we are to be successful as a species in unison here in this temporary earth experience, as human beings or spiritual beings having a human experience, it's like, look out at a tree and remember that no tree has branches so foolish as to fight amongst themselves. We must elect those, Wayne Dyer continues, who see the horror in having a world filled with weapons and live ammunition. And I'll add to that, not just trying to take it away from people because it's easier to control them. That's a different subject. They have to pursue at all costs, with true courage, the end of all weapons that are designed to kill, from mega death nuclear bombs to low caliber handguns. And if they are meant to inflict death, we must find another way. What? See, this is a controversial reading here. I'm like, that might have been part of the reason I skipped it the other day too, but it's that bit that we got at a minute ago. It's like, we need to get to a new awareness to where it's like, because we're still at this low level awareness to where we're like, it's still a fight. Like, talking about getting rid of guns is, people take that like, oh, you're getting rid of the people's weapons. But what's being talked about here is, getting rid of all of it on all levels, starting from the top, going down. But, that could be argued and debated too. It's like, what, then it'd just be anarchy and all the people be running around being crazy with weapons and there'd be no law enforcement to stay. It's a complicated subject, ladies and gentlemen, but you can see what Wayne Dyer is getting at here, talking about a utopian world where we've transcended or gone beyond the need for such things. And you might be thinking you're dreaming, but dreaming of a beautiful world is one of my favorite things to do. And I think it's getting better than it's ever been before. And so if you don't see that, you need to start changing your thoughts, and it might change your life. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Because there's enough of whatever it is you want to find out there in the world. Wayne Dyer continues here. We must look within our own hearts to quell our little soul's attraction to violence and instead find our fascinations with kindness and with love. Quote, all we need to do is be a little kinder toward each other. This was Aldous Huxley's answer when he was asked on his deathbed for advice to mankind after a lifetime of study and exploration of the human spirit. I need to look up Aldous Huxley. He sounds like a fascinating gentleman. A lifetime study and exploration of the human spirit. Simple words, Wayne Dyer says, with a simple solution. All we need to do is be a little kinder toward each other. War is most assuredly not kind. Being kind is the solution not only to the world as a collective whole, but in our individual lives, where it all begins. And that's exactly what we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen. When you do the work on yourself, when you study the wisdom of the ages and the wisdom of the Tao, and I'm not just talking about this book, Wisdom of the Ages, but I'm talking about all the great authors and poets and teachers and philosophers and mystics and psychologists and whoever it was throughout all of history. To me, that is the wisdom of the ages, because there's greatness to be learned that has been left behind for us to take a little time and try to apply it into our own lives, in our individual lives, where it all begins, and then eventually into the world as a collective whole. To put this awareness of Stephen Crane's poem to work in our own lives, Wayne Dyer says here, begin to do these 4 things. And this is why you should get this book for yourself, so you can put it on your shelf. And if you don't have a bookshelf, invest in one, or just have a stack of books. But it's great to have wonderful stuff like this to go back to and reference, even if it was just one line. Just one line, like the no tree has branches so foolish as to fight amongst themselves. That's a great line to go back to and be like, what was that one? So to put this into practice, into our own lives, Wayne Dyer suggests, number 1, eliminate your personal participation in movie going, television watching, or reading that promotes violence or reduces the value of human life by maiming, killing, and maltreatment of any form of entertainment. I'm just now thinking to myself, did I already do this video? That'll be so funny if I get done with this and realize that I've already done this chapter. I don't know, I was kind of feeling that way somewhat as I was reading it, but I also feel like I skipped it. Fascinating. We'll find out after I finish the recording, ladies and gentlemen. Teach young people to value kindness over killing. Talk to them about why you don't want them using play guns and weapons. Explain that they can change the world by choosing kindness over killing as a way to play. That was number 2. Number 3, catch yourself when you feel violent impulses and have a quiet self-talk that allows you to reprogram yourself along the lines of kindness rather than rage. By recognizing rage when it crops up, you will allow the big soul to begin to tame the baser tendencies of the little soul. Number 4, support organizations that have as their mission the eradication of violence on our planet. There are many organizations from national organizations to local groups that want to elect more kindness-oriented people to commissions. Choose at least one. Choose at least one person, I'm going to say, because he was saying choose at least one of these groups to give your support to. But I'm going to say choose at least one person that you can thinking of what Aldous Huxley said there, all we need to do is be a little kinder toward each other. So choose one person, ladies and gentlemen, that you go out of your way to be a little kinder towards. And don't tell anybody about it, because that creates the flow, the circuitry. There was a great, another great Native American teaching that said 3 kind acts a day will change communities. I forget exactly what it said, but the lesson was do 3 kind acts a day, don't tell anyone about it, and go out of your way to do it. Something as simple as holding the door for somebody. But there's that, ladies and gentlemen. I did not expect to go there. I think my favorite part about there was that, you know, that new awareness. We must find the place within ourselves where we know that in some non-earth-based way, we are all connected by an invisible organizing intelligence. And we need to live in this awareness that when we harm any human being, we harm the generic human being, which is all of us. And I think I'll leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully I didn't already record and do this video a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna search through and find out if I did. I'm pretty sure I skipped from Lewis Carroll's agelessness to, what was it? I skipped over laughter, I thought too. And we did visualization with William James. And then we went to Joyce Kilmer's Family and Home. And so solitude was next, but I thought I'd go back and get this one here finished, because I thought it might be important. And you know, it's funny when I think, sometimes when I judge the work that I do, especially in my art, oh, it's cool, you can see it better when anyways, especially when I do my art and, you know, this work, I judge it a lot differently than the viewers and, you know, the audience does. And so I really hope you got value out of this, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that one line about the new awareness had an impact. And I hope maybe we can just start being a little kinder to each other, ladies and gentlemen, because I think that'll really make a difference in the world before we even start talking about weapons. Kindness and love and empathy and compassion, all of these things need to begin to be the focus rather than our fascination with violence and combat and all of those kind of things. Boom to wisdom, ladies and gentlemen. Continue to seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment. Disclaimer, you know, I have all my own opinions about these things that are spoke about here, and sometimes to keep it medium, you know, to keep from going one direction or the other too far so that everybody can get value and learn from this. I try to sometimes keep my opinions to myself, or sometimes I hint that direction, but just a disclaimer. But the main key, ladies and gentlemen, is that happiness is not a result. Happiness is an activity. And so once we understand that, once we get that new awareness, that we've so long been striving after and chasing after happiness, like we'll finally get it when, instead of making it the way. But if we can begin to make happiness the way, ladies and gentlemen, then the goal that we've been chasing after and striving for becomes irrelevant, because we're already where we want it to be. And then we can begin to enjoy the entire journey, the whole way. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to subscribe. I really appreciate everybody and love everybody who spends time here with me and Dr. Wayne Dyer and all the wonderful authors and poets from the Wisdom of the Ages and Lao Tzu from the Wisdom of the Tao. And we'll be back next week with more Tuesday Tao and Wednesday Wisdom. And maybe next Wednesday we'll go into solitude and see what that one was all about. Be sure to expand the description below. Check out the links I've got. I've got a link to the book here, as well as a link to my landscape paintings. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate your time. I hope this has an impact on somebody out there. And we'll be back next week.